It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Kyle Benedict as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. I'm Kyle Benedict. Today we're sitting down with the Sedona Fire District, and we're going to be, for the majority of the show, talking about how to protect your home from just during wildfire season. We're here even though we've had some pulses of moisture come through. That seems to be followed by either really warm temperatures or wind or both, which just drives things right back up. So here from the Sedona Fire District is Fire Marshal Gary Johnson, as well as Assistant Chief Jeff Pichura. And Mr. Pichura began work March 7th, so we're going to kind of start off there. Tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of your background and where you come from.
Grew up in the Phoenix area and got into the fire service way back when in 1979 in the Maricopa County area, and then moved down to the Tucson area. Became a fire officer and then chief officer in the 80s. Fire chief of the Northwest Fire District down in the Tucson area until 2012. Moved into the Stockton area to help them out with their bankruptcy program that they had going on with the city and resetting the fire department. And then took about an 8-month break after that excitement there. And this opportunity came here in Sedona and applied for it, and here I am.
Yeah, great. What do you think is unique about the Sedona Fire District versus some of the places you've been in the past?
As topography, the different type of response model, you're in the wildland interface, you've got homes constructed right in the middle of it, a lot of rescues that we do in backcountry, sprains, vehicle accidents, UTVs, Jeeps, and it's just different approach to servicing the community than other areas I've been in.
So March 7th was your first day. How's everything been going so far?
It's going great.
Yeah, going great.
Great group of people and a great community.
So this kind of threat of wildfire and just fire in general isn't new. I mean, given that you're from Arizona, down in Tucson, Arizona, I'm sure that same threat is there almost year round, right? It is,
and it's like in most communities now with the drought conditions lasting longer than usual in our lifespan. You're seeing year-round fires, and it's light vegetation mostly, and like the grasses and some brush year-round. But obviously in the summer times we dry out, and whether it's human ignition or lightning, it gets pretty exciting. Okay,
Gary, what if you could kind of describe some of the conditions across the district right now in the Sedona area, how are the conditions and how's kind of that level of threat for fire right now?
Well, we're starting to see a dry out. I mean, last weekend we got a nice rain, and what that does, it kind of buys us, I generally look at it, it buys us about a week or so. It depends again on temperature and winds and how that'll impact us. We've got some more weather coming in this weekend, so from a fire prevention standpoint, it's always beneficial. I always feel positive when we do get some of that rain because it helps push it back a little bit, that fire season. I was originally anticipating potential fire restrictions taking place in the middle of May. A little bit of luck, I think they got pushed back a week or two. A lot of it will have to do with the winds. I think example of last 2 Saturdays ago's fire is an example that even though we've had some rain, the potential is there. And really that potential is there all the time. And here's an example where in the wash, fire got started, winds were blowing in excess of 30 miles an hour, pulled that fire right out, pushed it right out of that wash, across an open field. Fortunately, firefighters were able to get on it, cut it off, knock it down, but unfortunately, one of the homes had debris on the roof. It was a flat roof. Embers got into it. We talk a lot about defensible space, but I remind folks it's not always that wall of fire. It's those embers that are traveling. So this is that time of year that you want your property to be lean, clean, and green, because you don't have a home for those embers.
Yeah, and we're going to get into all of that stuff on kind of how to protect your property, but it seems like with that happened a couple weeks ago, and really there was multiple things that kind of happened there. I mean, you had, I believe it was kids that found a lighter or matches or something, were playing in the wash, and the wind kicked up and just kind of pushed this thing. But I guess starting out maybe there and kind of how that fire was touched off with children, what's the best way to approach that conversation and how to talk to your kids about playing with fire? I mean, what's the best way to go about that?
Well, there's a number of things you can do. I think that the parents can really stress the issue, and one of the things that we do when we go into schools and we talk to the younger kids is that matches are tools, not toys. And so for them to understand that if they find matches, they find lighters, things like that, that they take them and give them to an adult or they give them to their parents. That takes it out of that element. So that's number one. Number two is if one of the parents or a parent feels they have a child. Think about it. When you're young, there's a lot of curiosity that goes along, and so if that's the case, they're more than welcome to give a call to the fire department. We've got some programs. We can also talk to the kids, and in many cases, the parent can say the same thing I say, but when it comes from someone like me, it seems to have a little more weight. And so if they feel that's the case, then we can end up talking to those children.
And a good phone number for the Sedona Fire District is 928-282-6800, or you can visit them online at sedonafire.org, or you can always contact your local fire agency as well. And one thing that I'm sure makes Sedona unique, a lot of things, but one of the main things when you're talking about education and educating the public on the dangers of fires, how to prevent that, is a lot of tourists here in this area. And it seems like that's one thing. You have this constant new wave of people coming in and coming out of the city. So how do you go about educating those people? How do you go about doing that? Is it just kind of educate the community and then hope that word of mouth people are talking about that, or what's the best way, do you think, to go about that?
Part of the preconditioning of our community is helping our hotel operators, as well as our restaurant folks, those service folks and centers that contact our tourism groups that come into the community, letting them, giving them a lot of information as to what the fire problems are in our community. And we're also hoping that as our tourists come into the communities, that they've experienced some sort of wildland experience in their homes. And you're just hoping that maybe a PSA would get out there while they're staying through the print and or radio, or online and or television is getting out there.
Yeah, just education, and you hope that people talk to their friends and kind of pass all that stuff along. Maybe go to somebody's house and say, hey, you got a lot of brush kind of creeping up to the perimeter of your house there. So when we come back, we're going to take our first break. When we come back, as Gary was mentioning with that fire a couple weeks ago, it was almost a perfect storm, if you will, of wind, brush going up to different trees, and then you had embers landing on roofs and those roofs not being clean. So we're going to touch on all of that when we get back from our break here on Countywide. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes? B, console her?
Don't worry, sweetie. This is gonna happen a lot.
Or C, find her a new boyfriend?
Nice single boys. That was weird.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
When I was 6, my days were spent playing basketball. When I was 6, my dream was to make it to the NBA. When I was 6, my mom had a stroke.
I'm Paul George, and I want you to spot a stroke fast.
F, face drooping. A, Arm weakness. S. Speech difficulty. T. Time to call 911. Protect the ones you love. Spot a stroke fast.
Welcome back to Countywide. We're sitting down with Assistant Chief of the Sedona Fire District, Jeff Pichur, as well as Fire Marshal Gary Johnson, talking about just how to protect your property and make sure it's ready and just all geared up for fire season. We're, as Gary mentioned at the beginning of the show, we're in full swing right now. Luckily, we've had some moisture, but things dry out really quickly. So we're just making sure everybody is careful out there. Abandoned campfires, we've been talking about it already this year on our national force. They've been seeing what seems to be another year of problems with people leaving their campfires unattended and not extinguishing them fully. But kind of diving into how you can protect your home, let's start with defensible space. That's one thing that we talk about all the time. What is defensible space, Jeff?
It's an area around the home where the fuels, the grass, the brush, the trees are away from your home, in the sense that you can still have a beautiful landscape piece, but they're trimmed up, mowed down, and it doesn't allow the fire to creep into the building itself, along the ground and or through the vegetation of the trees itself. That's defensible space. And
how much room are we talking here between the house and maybe where that line is drawn?
It depends upon your vegetation type. If you have 10-foot, 20-foot brush trees and such, you want to have at least 1.5 times that space between you. And with grasses, 10 to 20 feet is not bad. Mowed down really low. So it really depends upon your fuel types around your home.
And with that, you hear ladder fuels, about this ladder fuels a lot. Gary, can you talk about what ladder fuels are and kind of how that plays into your property and what you should be doing with those?
Before we talk about ladder fuels, I want to make a point that some of the folks will come to me and they'll say, I don't have 10 feet or I don't have 20 feet. Think about how some of the homes are set up in some of the subdivisions. I encourage them to use the space that you have. If you don't own it, you can't deal with it. But don't be afraid to go next door to your neighbor and say, our houses are kind of close together. Do you have any objections? Or how about if we get together and clean up some of that area that's kind of shared? I did that with my neighbor. Worked out great. So I think that's just something to think about, because sometimes I think they get hung up on the numbers. Some folks, yes, they've got 50 feet because their properties weren't big enough. The home I live in is on a 1/4 acre, so as a result don't have a lot of space on one side the way the homes were set. So just think about that. And the real issue that I try and really, pass on to the folks, you're wanting to try and stop that fire from having an easy route to get into your home. But when we talk about ladder fuels, here's where we've got those grasses. That's why it's so critical to keep them trimmed down. So let's say you don't trim them. They get down and they get underneath that tree. Where are the branches in that tree? If those branches are hanging low, now we got the grass is light, the branches, it'll start to climb up the tree. That's where we use the example of the ladder fuels. It's like a ladder that by not trimming it up, you're providing a ladder for that fire to climb up into that tree.
Yeah, we saw that picture from that fire a couple weekends ago you had the bottom half of those trees up in flames, and that was coming right out of the wash. So like you mentioned, going from the brush to the low-hanging branches. Okay, so that's defensible space, making sure you want to clear all that stuff around your property. And I'm glad you mentioned this goes for people in neighborhoods where homes are close together and you don't have to have a bunch of property, because maybe people, I think when you hear about whether it's 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet clearing brush from your property, it's just like, well, if it's got the home next door, my home's already in trouble. So when you're talking about just making sure you don't have, brush going right up there. We had a fire in Granite Creek Park a couple weeks ago over in Prescott where they had just this fire burning in low grasses, and it got right up in between two homes and followed it right up underneath the deck and burnt underneath the deck because there was no defensible space around that property. So that's another example right there. What about clearing stuff from your roofs? We mentioned with that fire last week, an ember landed on top of the roof, and in Sedona there are a lot of homes with these flat roofs. What type of stuff are we looking for there? Low roofs with flat roofs, but also you have these pitches which also have this flammable material. People don't really think about that. What about shake roofs? What's the danger with shake roofs?
If you're living in an area where you have a lot of trees and they're overhanging on the roofs, and or it's a windy day and a lot of stuff's blowing off of the trees, especially in the fall time and or during the dry seasons. It's a really good idea that homeowners as well as the property owners get up and inspect their roof structures, flat and or pitched. Asphalt, shingles take a lot of heat to burn, but if you have a lot of buildup in the gutter areas and alike, if you get an ember cast in there, you can start burning the wood around the area, and then it just runs right into the attic space. So maintaining the gutters, maintaining your roofs, no matter the construction type, is an important piece. We've seen in tile roofs bird's nest in areas that are just chipped away because of weathering, and those burn as well. So I mean, it's just inspect your roof and maintain it properly on an annual basis.
Yeah, just kind of make that part of your spring cleaning, I guess, around your home, inside and out.
And this is the time to do it when you think about it. Fire season's coming up. What comes after fire season? Typically monsoon. So you want to make sure that your roof is able to handle I call it fire hose water because it seems like it when it rains. But that amount of water that comes off your roof, make sure your gutters can handle it so that you don't have additional damage. So this is a perfect time to get up there, take a look, make sure it's clean.
Real quick, you guys have a Firewise event coming up towards the end of this month. What is that, and kind of what's the purpose of it?
It's clean up your property, and we'll provide dumpsters at our Station 4 in Uptown, and it's May 20, 21, and 22. 3 large dumpsters for folks to bring in vegetation, and and some debris buildup that you may have around the home. Dump it there, and we'll handle it. It's part of our Firewise program, and it's a part of our Ready, Set, Go program that's aligned with the national effort to keep our properties in good shape and defensible in the event of wildfire.
And this is just for Sedona residents, right?
This will be for the Sedona Fire District.
Okay.
Okay. So for example, if you live in Oak Creek Canyon, you live in the Village Oak Creek, you live in the city, and so forth. So within the district, they can bring it. I really want to encourage folks when they bring their stuff, please cover your loads. Okay, so that we don't find the debris by the side of the road.
It's a problem there as well.
Or in the road.
Or in the road.
Okay.
There's also, if you live outside of the Sedona Fire District, there's been the last couple of weeks and upcoming some free slash drop-off programs as well, just throughout Yavapai County. So keep an eye out for that. We've been talking about those on our newscasts as well. So that's coming up, the Firewise event for the residents within the Sedona Fire District, May 20th through the 22nd, 21st, and 22nd. For more information on that or anything we're talking about today, you can call 928-282-6800 or visit sedonafire.org. Also, as always, if you have any questions about any of this, you can contact your local fire agency, whatever district or department you live within. So we're going to take our next break. When we come back, we're just going to continue talking about how to protect your home from fire here on Countywide. We'll see you in a couple minutes.
Todd's a great guy. I mean, look at him. What a sweetheart. Attaboy. Wait, Todd, what are you doing? How totally selfish and un-Todd-like of you. Come on, Todd. Come on, man.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your closet. Still no jobs? Just more stuff? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed. And they're the stuff inside your stuff. Our job is to unlock those jobs. And it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover keytar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
Morning, Gary. We are GetSchooled.com. You want a college education, don't you? You know you do. That's why we're here. We're free and here to guide you through every step of the way, starting with attendance. Gary, financial aid forms. Picking a college, man. You and us. We go together like tacos and Tuesday.
And I love tacos. Go to getschool.com.
Welcome back to Countywide. Just a couple minutes left in the show today, talking with the Sedona Fire District about just how to prepare your home for this wildfire season. Fire Marshal Gary Johnson is here, as well as Assistant Chief Jeff Pichura. We talked about defensible space, cleaning your roofs and gutters, how important all that is, ladder fuels, all that good stuff. For more information on that, if you just want kind of a proper way to go about doing all that, wildlandfirersg.org, wildlandfirersg.org, or again, contact your local fire agency. Gary, can people contact you guys to have you come out and inspect their property?
You bet. If they just call 282-6800, we'll set up an inspection. Someone will come out, walk their property, make recommendations, point out the pluses, point out the negatives. And it's important to remember, too, that your property didn't get this way overnight. It may take a while for you to get it corrected, but you need to start. And everything that you do helps your firefighters help you in the event of a fire. So we need your help. We can't do this alone. We're more than willing to go out and do that. And the same thing with this Ready, Set, Go. You know, folks, look at that. We've talked about being defensible space. Remember, what happens if you have to evacuate? You need to have a plan, okay? And then, of course, so that will really help and give you some great pointers. And so I think those are probably two critical points.
Yeah, I mean, we really spent this whole show talking about how to protect your home, but you got to have a place to go and a plan as well. So that's something that you need to, I mean, even outside of fire season, you have to just have a plan with whatever disaster it may be or situation there. So real quick, Jeff, what's kind of the mindset of the firefighters during this type of season when especially you see conditions dry? I mean, are you just constantly on the edge of your seat waiting for, I mean, you hope you don't have a call like that, but are you just waiting for every day for some fire story to come through?
You know, it's fun to see in the fire stations that next to the fire rigs, you see their gear prepped up and ready to go. So they'll have their wildland packs, their boots, and their structure gear, as well as their EMS gear, so they can menu select those things to get onto the rig and go to the calls. We've done a lot of training lately to update and refresh our skills as required by the National Wildfire Group on making sure we're doing it safely. And it's called sets and reps. You got to practice it all the time, and it's just an awareness enhancement for us.
Okay, great. Yeah, and in addition to all that stuff, I mean, there's things you need to practice with your vehicle, not parking over dry grasses, making sure if you're, smoking a cigarette while you're driving, you use your ashtray and all that good stuff. So don't drag any chains or all that. So there's a ton of things you can talk about. Again, with your SedonaFire.org website, you can find out more information. You can contact your local agency. And then, as Gary mentioned, the Ready, Set, Go program, their website, wildlandfirersg.org. It's going to do it for today's Countywide. Jeff, thank you for coming in, and nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Everyone, make sure you get your homes prepared. Again, that's Sedona Fire District Fire Marshal Gary Johnson and Assistant Chief Jeff Pichura. That's going to do it for today's Countywide. We'll see you next time.